No, you can't hear me?
It's not. You're loud.
Oh! So we're talking about mustard seeds, and so that's what we're doing. So how do we fill an hour about mustard seeds? So this picture, you may think it's mustard seed. I'm actually doubting myself because I don't think it's mustard seeds. So these are because I have pictures of mustard seeds. But here's what happens: if you use PowerPoint, they have this new feature where it will give you all these options that make the slides look cool. And this one moved, and I thought that, hey, that's kind of cool. So I got the moving inaccurate slide instead. That's okay. That's okay. I've got to say, it is intimidating to be up here for a couple of reasons. Not the least of which were our last 2 weeks and our last 2 teachers. Travis, I know Travis is here. Justin, I haven't seen him. But tremendous. I'm not joking you. It's yeah, I may be too loud. 2 of the best classes I've ever heard taught by people that aren't actually getting paid to teach. And so y'all have to be applauded. And I'm really mad at y'all for setting the bar so high. But I want y'all to think about some questions as we go through this. And Haley, can you write on the board? So these are the 4 questions as we go through the class today that I want you to think about. Because we're going to talk about perspective. We're going to start off with just talking about perspective. So, first question, what is one thing that you heard in class today that you liked? Number 2, what is something you heard in class today that you didn't like? Something that turned your stomach? What's something that you'll think about over the next week? So it might be one of your first 2 answers. And then, could you be wrong about something you currently think as we sit here all night? And if you react strongly to any of those questions, or the answer that you have to any of those questions, I want you to ask a 5th question: why? And then maybe ask why again, and ask why again, and ask why again, until maybe you get to the root or something deeper on why you might have liked something in class or disliked something in class. Does that make sense? But I thought to start the class, we will start with a prayer. I do come before you with some fear and trembling, so today we're going to talk about a couple of things that we don't typically talk about in church, that are uncomfortable. I designed it to be uncomfortable for a reason, and I hope that you will see this by the end of class. The Kyrie Eleison is a prayer, if you've ever been to any liturgical service. So our Catholic friends and our Orthodox friends, our Anglican friends as well, this is near the first of their service, just about every week. So it means, Lord, have mercy. So it's a prayer of forgiveness. So forgiveness of our personal sins and of our community sins. But I think it's also an awareness that God is God and that we are not. And today, as we approach these very ancient, sacred texts, I think we've got to approach it with the humility that they deserve. Humility is going to be a big point of our class today. So the Kyrie Eleison is an invitation to open our hearts to transformation and listening to what God has to say through these texts. So if you'll take just a second to say this prayer. God, we come before you today with busy minds and busy hearts. So often this busyness keeps us from hearing what you have to say. We also confess that our pride keeps us from understanding you and understanding others. We are much more eager to respond than to listen. But as we enter this time, may we approach you with quiet minds, humble spirits, and an openness of heart to feel what you want us to feel. Amen. Recap, everybody loves recaps. You can fill time with recaps, right? So we discussed a whole lot of definitions about parables. And I want to add one. Anybody know Diana Butler Bass? Anybody? Am I adding something new to our... this is great. Diana Butler Bass, if you want a different perspective of a pastor, of a scholar, she is a great author. She was raised Methodist. She dabbled in some evangelical churches, and so now she's a pastor at an Episcopal church. She's been a very successful scholar as well, so she's had lots and lots of roles, and I find her books to be enlightening and easy to read. I would encourage you to pick one up. This is a paragraph that she has on her book, Freeing Jesus. Parable comes from two Greek terms, para, meaning to come alongside, and balien, meaning to throw, and is itself a paradoxical word. A parable is intended to be a story that comes alongside our regular understanding and frankly upsets it. It uses ordinary things to draw us to extraordinary ones and crafts understanding, using the seen and the seen to unseen, using the seen to explain the unseen. In effect, the parables are Jesus coming alongside us and ripping off our cozy theological comforters. Parables should leave us gasping out in the doctrinal cold and shaking with anger, awe, or surprise. Nothing is as we thought. The whole point of a parable is to disturb and perplex us, shaking up what we believe to be true, all without providing an easy answer or simple moral to fall back. In other words, comfort the afflicted and afflict the comforted. I don't know which one of those you are, whether you're the comfortable or the afflicted, but these parables are designed to help both. Other things, so 2 weeks ago, Travis taught us about the yeast, and then last week we heard about pearls. So these things that are small that grow into much bigger things. Mustard seed, you just might have some correlation with some of those themes as well.
I think your mic went off.
I think it did too.
Maybe change up the range. Maybe.
So I have to talk louder?
I'll be right back.
Sure. I would also say one of the things that struck me was the multiple perspectives of these texts. We all have an interpretation of the text. Something that struck me was 2 weeks ago. Samantha, you may not even remember this, but we're talking about yeast, and she makes this great comment about, it was the women that were probably making bread. And so that spoke a lot to you, because Jesus is not just talking to men, but he's talking to men and women. That's okay. So, guess what? I'm a dumb man. Did I get that point? I didn't. I would have never grasped that significance of that. the Samantha, and I'm sure that others in this room, other females in this room did, grasp the significance of using bread as the symbol, as the metaphor in that. So thank you. Thank you. And then lastly, we're kind of saying, is right answer? Is there a right answer? And I hope from all of these, at least definitions that we're throwing around with parables, that it maybe it's clear to me that the right answer is really, really difficult to come to. In fact, I would say there's good answers, and there's certainly bad answers. There are some bad answers for these parables, but getting to the right answer, I don't think that's the point. I don't think that's the point. So I'll ask you, is anybody uncomfortable with multiple perspectives in these parables? Does that sit well with people, or is that uncomfortable? If anybody's uncomfortable about it, sure, you can feel free to raise your hand. I'd like to hear from yes, sir, yes, sir.
I think that demonstrates the living word nature of God's word in that the parables can impact every single one of us in a different way, and we have those different perspectives because he varies through his infinite wisdom those things that will speak to each person in their own way.
I like that. The text becomes alive. Does it bother you that there's not a right answer, or that there may not be a right answer? I'll leave the door open that there may be a right answer, but there may not be a right answer.
A thought that I have, when I was looking at Kathy's, it made me think of it. So when we were young, we did Bible Bowl, right? And we studied the text, and then we would go like compete against other kids about who knew and understood the text better. I don't know that they ever did Bible Bowl with parables, but that is a thought that's going through my head. Am I comfortable that there might not be a right answer? I think our religious tradition, we banked on being able to know the right answer. So that's going through my head.
Yeah, we said if we could study hard enough, we could get back to the early church. We could get there, right? We just have to study. From our history, I think that doesn't feel right. I also think from our culture, we have a hand. Go for it.
I believe that there are many things in Scripture that are non-negotiable. And that we have Jesus Christ as Lord, came, died for us, went to heaven, intercedes for us, all those things. But I think that some of these writings that we're talking about, the parables, he gave the parables for almost the reason he wanted people to start thinking. And I think that's what we're here doing right now. So.
Thank you for that perspective. Yes, we're going to do some thinking today. Yes, ma'am.
I think that, okay, I'll use my school teacher words. I think that in our class on Tuesday morning, we're studying the dust of the rabbi. We're talking about Jesus and other rabbis who were going out and teaching. And it said, and they talk about how that these rabbis gave their impression, their interpretation, their, and that they, in these house churches, that there was this, like David talked about, there was discussion. So I wonder if we could do a deep dive and be a fly on the wall, if we wouldn't hear them discussing, well, yeah, maybe it could mean this, and maybe it could mean that.
Let's stick a pin in that, because I have this slide that I think you're going to be really excited about. Really excited. I think as a culture, we live in this soup that maybe we're not comfortable with different perspectives. Maybe, just maybe, hearing other perspectives and other answers are uncomfortable to us. How do I know this? This is where some of these questions might start coming in. Does anybody know what this list is? Anybody have an idea? So these are politicians in our country that have either been assassinated or have been attempted to be assassinated. This is just since 2011. It's ramping up. The last 5 of those have been within the last year. I was going to put an R and a D up there. I didn't want to be accused of being political, so I didn't do that.
Really?
Shots are being fired from both sides. So it's not one side or the other. This slide is staggering. A better word for me is humiliating. It's absolutely humiliating. So all of these people on here have a perspective. They think that they're getting to the right answer. They're approaching the right answer. And somebody else, sometimes a whole group of people, are so angry at just hearing that perspective that they want to silence them. It's humiliating in several levels, but for me, one of the reasons is because emotionally I'm drawn to some of these names more than others. Some of these names affect me more than others. I suspect you may be in the same boat. So today I'm going to push you to listen to different perspectives. And I'm going to explain why I think the parables may be the perfect tool for us to use. I'm giving you an invitation to disagree, an invitation to agree, and an invitation to dive deep in your soul to figure out what the difference may be. Okay? But as we discuss perspectives, I think it may be helpful to hear where I came from. So I'm born in 1979, so at the tail end of Generation X. I'm squeaky. So I do remember times where there wasn't any computers. Although I will say very early in elementary school we started doing typing courses because we knew that computers were coming. But I do remember a time where there were no computers. I was born in Lubbock, Texas, and I went to Broadway Church of Christ. Anybody that knows Broadway Church of Christ knows it was a true bell cow of the last century, as far as churches of Christ go. I can remember it dwindled pretty quickly after I was born, but there would be 2,000 people in our auditorium for a random Sunday night. For a sense, random Sunday night service. So they would have more people at night than they did in the mornings. So we were members of this church. It gave us a community. We knew that whatever happened in the week, the doors would be open Sunday and Wednesday. We got to fellowship with those like-minded believers. Those like-minded believers influenced my understanding of the world, of the Bible, of God. And I definitely grew up in a bubble. And bubbles are good and bad. Bubbles help. I felt a great sense of security. But bubbles do pops. The bubble was so strong that it wasn't until I was a senior, this may tell you something about me. It wasn't until I was a senior, junior, yeah, as a junior of high school, that I realized that Lubbock had any Jews in it. I didn't realize that we had any Jews at all. This was completely foreign concept to me. And because of where I grew up, this homogenized group of believers, we thought we had the right answer. And we dealt with this idea of belief equals community. So it's our belief that helps bring us into community. And whenever your belief starts to stray from the community, suddenly you're outside of those walls of the community. I don't know if anybody else has felt that tension, but I know a lot of folks that grow up in those sorts of churches feel that tension, that your belief has to match the community. I've always been drawn to the underdog. I don't really know why this is. Maybe it's because I'm a Chicago Cubs fan and a Texas Tech Raiders fan, and until very recently we had nothing to cheer about. But this sense of the underdog is deep inside my sense of justice. When I see the villain taking advantage of those that are weaker, that just really irritates me. When I see a corporation, a very large corporation or a country taking advantage of their citizens or of the common folk, it's hard for me just to overlook it. I'm very lucky that I had the skills and have the skills to be a physician. Yeah, I'm still a physician. I'm not seeing patients right now. I work for Superior Health Plan doing something called utilization management, which if I explained it, it'd be really boring. So I'm not going to explain it. But being a physician has taught me a couple of things. One is that I'm a very rational thinker. Physician and scientist are kind of two sides of the same coin. I always feel like I can just think my way through a problem. If I just had that extra test or that extra study, then we can cure this person, right? Which when I read the Bible, I get to those miracles, and I have no idea what to do with those things. I hate miracles. I have no idea what to do with them. I usually try to rationalize them, which I think probably takes away some of the power of those stories. The other thing that makes being a physician really difficult is every person that's in front of you is a different canvas. They have a different makeup. Their genetics are different. Where they came from is different. You know, if they're a smoker, they drink a lot. These are all things that influence their health. And so it is impossible to treat this person the same as the last person with this condition. Because each person is an individual. And it's really hard to paint on a constantly changing canvas, I think. I'm a seeker by spirituality. And this is probably a realization that I've had pretty recently. But things that I was taught didn't sit well with me. And so I'm going to dig and seek. Sometimes, maybe some synonyms that have different connotations would be dissatisfied, restless, discontented, aloneness sometimes. But it's that seeking mentality that I can't get outside of. And then lastly, Enneagram is a big thing these days. I'm an Enneagram 9. So on good days, I'm a peacemaker. On bad days, I'm a peace avoider. I just want to avoid conflict. And when I get really stressed, I actually go to the Enneagram 1, which is the perfectionist. So if I ever get really mad about loading the dishwasher, you may know that I'm more stressed than I love. But so these are just characteristics that make who I am, and it influences how I read the Bible is my perspective. Um, let's take the Moses and Exodus story for a second. So which of the characters in that story do you guys connect with? So after hearing me talk, I was, raised in where I was. Oh, David, you're a leader. You're a leader. So I feel like I'm Moses, right? I haven't always been comfortable standing before people. I sometimes said, no, let them do it. God, this isn't for me. But I do very strongly feel like, hey, Pharaoh, bad guy, you let my people out of this mess, right? So in that story, I kind of connect with Moses. What do you guys connect with in this story? Be a little more pointed. Anybody connect with the complainers walking out in the desert for a while? Do you connect with those folks in the story? A few heads. Yeah. I've gone through times where I definitely feel that. I was listening to something, and there was a Choctaw Christian that was talking about this story. Anybody want to guess who they connect with? The folks from the Choctaw Nation. What is that?
The Israelites.
Not the Israelites. The Canaanites. So let this sit a minute. Our brothers and sisters from the Choctaw Nation, which is just in Oklahoma, connect with the Canaanites. They're the bad ones. They're the ones that God told us to go and annihilate. Do you think that influenced the way that back in the 17 and 1800s we may have treated our native peoples here? Do you think that it might impact the way that our native people, our Choctaw friends, might deal with us, these European Americans that come into their land? When I first heard that, it was a stop-down moment, like, this is changing. But I can't be the same person after hearing that. It is impossible. I wrote the reason the Bible has lasted this long, that the Hebrew parts have lasted 3,000 years, and that the New Testament part have lasted 2,000 years, is because it is alive. It's because everybody can pull something that connects with it. When we look for just the right answers, guess what happens? It dies. The right answers cause it to die, if that's what we're looking at. And it's alive because it doesn't get easy answers. And we have to be reminded of this and aware of this and constantly reminded of this, because guess what? We do not like this fact. We do not like this fact. I'm getting uncomfortable. And I'm doing the talking, so I can't imagine what you're we want the Bible to be our answer book, our guide. We want, we like the fallacy that we have the answers, that this book gives us all the answers, that we know what's best for our neighbor, right? Because it's in the Bible. I thought for a long time that was the right way. But when I thought that way, the Bible was barely one-dimensional. It's not until I started reading it a different way that I could peel those layers of the onion, and suddenly this thing grows into 2, 3, 4 dimensions. So So, and nobody reads the Bible like I do. And guess what? You do not read it like anybody else. And this is truly positive. This is a positive thing. It keeps the Bible alive. But it's something we've got to be aware of when we start talking to other people. This is my portion that says the Bible is complicated. So not only do we bring our own baggage to the Bible, but the Bible has baggage with it. It's really, really complicated. So Bible bowl question. These are easy. We'll hit this out of the park. How many books are in the Bible? 66, right? That's easy. So our Protestant Bible, yes, 66 books, 39 in what we call the Old Testament. I don't like the term Old Testament. The New Testament is 27 books. That's easy. I think y'all may be getting it that Protestant Bible might be a tip-off. What about our Catholic friends? We live in San Antonio. The majority of folks go to Catholic churches. How many books do Catholics have in their canon? What is that? Yeah. Oh, sorry, Hebrew Bible. Hebrew Bible, sorry, the Tanakh. So this is what our Jewish ancestors had. They have 24 books, so less than our 39. Part of it is because, like, 1st and 2nd Kings is one book. They have some books that are different from ours, but they're combining some books. They rearrange the order of books than we do. But yes, they're Hebrew Bible. Our Catholic friends, they have 73, 46 in the Old Testament, and Apocrypha, so these apocryphal books. Protestant folks have never known what to do with those things. Maccabees is ridiculous for us, right? How about the Orthodox folks, going back maybe even a little bit further in history? Anybody have any idea? They don't even know. Between 76 and 79, how many canons. So their canon grows a little bit bigger. And then the oldest canon. Anybody know where the oldest canon for Christians is? These are easy Bible questions. The Ethiopian Orthodox Tawahedo Bible. So it has between 81 and 88. Again, they need to get on the same page, I think. And this is generally the oldest canon. So, the Bible's complicated, right? Can't decide what books are important, what books aren't, which ones we can ignore. What's the oldest? So the oldest complete Hebrew Bible manuscript. So oldest full Old Testament written in Hebrew. Anybody have any idea? (930). It was written 930 after death. That's the Aleppo Codex. So let this sit for a minute. It's 1,000 years after Jesus was born, almost 1,000 years. So this has all the Hebrew scriptures together in one thing. It took 1,000 years after Jesus for them to synthesize all these things. So before then, and David talked a little bit about it today, they had manuscripts, they had letters, it was word of mouth. They could go to the temple and pull out a scroll. I mean, they're lucky. Most of them couldn't read. There's folks that think Jesus couldn't read. Probably right. Couldn't read text. But imagine that. So you're trying to learn something new and you have no sources to wrestle with each night when you go to bed. So the Bible is complicated. It's complicated. What did the folks in the New Testament have? They had it written in Greek, so that's good. So the Septuagint is a Greek text, of our Old Testament. Of course, not everybody could read Greek. Jesus spoke Aramaic, so he probably couldn't read Greek at all. So this is a translation from Hebrew text. I'm not going to talk about Dead Sea Scrolls, but I will talk about that in these texts or the old Hebrew manuscripts, there are no vowels at all. So RN could mean run, ran, rain, rain. And I used to be really good at Scrabble, so there may be some other words that are RNs, but there's no vowels. So these ancient translations, there's some guesswork. You're having to put context clues in there. And as they age, there's some friction sometimes and what these texts say, and what they mean. New Testament writers use both the Septuagint and the Hebrew language. So the big example is Matthew. He used both of these, from what I've read. When quoting verses from the Old Testament, he would use both the Greek and the Hebrew translations. And Silva, you brought up the rabbis. They knew this was a problem. 2,000 years ago, they knew that this was something to wrestle with. And instead of saying, hey, guys, let's all have a meeting. Let's get on the same page. We need to make this easy for people. So let's just get on the same page. They wrestled. They like Jacob wrestling with God. They would wrestle with these passages, and they would write it down. So midrash is this kind of term and of the wrestling, the debating, and they would correlate, or they would collate all of these debates, these writings that they're trying to figure out the interpretation. And guess what? It was seen as worship. So debate, this idea of debate as worship. This was a part of what made them who they are. And when they argued vociferously, I mean, some of these are their name calling. But what did they do afterward? Did they kick them out and say, you need to go to the Baptist Jewish church? They embraced each other. They went and they had meals together. They did all the sacraments together. You see this actually in our New Testament. So I think our New Testament writers knew of this as well. Because Peter, James, Paul, they don't agree on things. These teachings of Jesus are hard, and you can see them wrestling with these teachings. They're not sure about them. And I can only imagine if they were all in the same place, they would have this debate. And then what would they do? They would go and embrace, and they would go eat a meal together after. This sign of unity. That's the unity that I think is spoken of. And they didn't have to be uniform. They had to be unified. There's more issues with translations. This is another thing that changed me forever. Matthew 5, 6, and 10. So this is our Beatitudes. If I can, so Matthew 5, 6, of course, blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be satisfied. And then the other one, blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. So we all know these, right? What's righteousness? What's righteousness?
Godliness?
Yeah. When you think of righteousness, do you think of inward, like how am I acting? It's kind of a personal word.
He made right with God because of him.
Can I get someone to look up Matthew 5, 6? Just Google this. Matthew 5, 6 Spanish translation. So especially if you're good at speaking Spanish. But yeah, so we know these verses, right? We know these are easy. How's Mr. Google working today? Oh, got it? All right. You ready?
Dichosos son los que tienen hambre y sed de justicia, porque serán santificados.
Okay, I got one word from there. No, you're good. Justicia. Justicia. So is righteousness in that? The word that we say is righteous, is it in that Spanish translation? It's justicia. Why is that? Anybody have any idea?
Justice.
So yeah, so it's justice. So blessed are those who hunger and thirst for justice, for they shall be satisfied. So blessed are those who are persecuted because of justice, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Does that change those beatitudes in you? Does that give it a new little flavor? So why is that? Why do us English folks say righteous and our friends south of the border say justice? That's weird. It comes from this word, this Greek word, and I know we love Greek, guys, but it's called dikaiosine. I think I nailed that. Dikaiosine. It means both righteous and just. It's the same thing. It's intertwined. And there's Hebrew words that have the same connotation. In fact, it's sort of like you cannot have justice without being righteous. And you cannot have righteousness without being just. Without being just. So when we think about just that one little word in translation, how does that affect how we as churches interact with our community? Anybody want to give that a shot? That's a hard one.
How we typically use righteousness is very inward-looking.
Yeah.
How we typically use the word justice is outward.
Yeah.
And to the point, I think years ago, like phrases like social justice could actually be offensive to people in church if they read righteousness, not justice.
Yes, sir.
It certainly changes where we seek. Where is your attention? If it's about me and what I need to do to improve or to be better, then what am I not doing? If it's only about the other, what am I not doing?
Mm-hmm.
Both are a problem.
There's a lot more wrestling, isn't it? The answers become a little bit more cloudy. The solutions become a little bit more cloudy. When you have to think about righteous and justice.
Even now, when you say that, well, I caught myself thinking, oh, I like justice better. I'm gonna ditch the personal righteousness and just move to the justice thing. But that our golly, like our tendency to want to get to the definitive thing and make it and simplify. That's a thing I'm feeling right now.
Yeah, what happens if you just have justice?
I don't know.
Can I go back to our uncomfortable slide there? My humiliating slide? What happens with Charlie Kirk? Charlie Kirk had a lot of righteousness, didn't he? He used verses from the Bible to say a lot of things about politics. The guy who didn't like him and who shot him, he had some justice. He had very little righteousness. Charlie Kirk had very little justice, I think, in a lot of his comments that he had. Neither side wants to intermix these concepts of righteousness and justice. And I think when we see that word righteous, we've got to think of both words. But we've also got to be aware that these little translation things really change how we read certain verses. We knew what the Beatitudes said, all right? I'll skip this. And you're always saying, thank you, please, thank you for skipping it. So, what does this all mean? Dave, you're boring us to death. Gosh, what does this mean? Where are you going with this? And I'm going to kind of read some of this. Unlike the church that I grew up in, I think it is uniform interpretation is impossible. It's not possible. The Bible's too complicated. We have too many issues inside of ourselves. We come from too many different places. The Bible was written 2,000 years ago. Difference in culture, language. It's impossible. Uniform understanding is impossible. And I will also say it's dangerous. It's dangerous. So why is it dangerous? And because when we try to get to a uniform interpretation, we raise up some voices and we shrink other voices. And Samantha, your voice would have been shrunk until very recently. And that's not right. And I know that because God hears my voice, and God hears everybody's voice. And God wants a diverse voices out there. And so what does this have to do with parables at all? Parables are tools. Jesus is teaching us something, and I think the biggest lesson is to wrestle with these stories. It's not the outcome of the story. It's not getting to any sort of a right answer, but it's the wrestling that helps us. Because when we have to face difficult choices and issues, so things like family issues or work issues that every choice seems bad, or if we want to take it in the political realm, when we have to talk about things like poverty, immigration, healthcare, where there's no easy answers, we have already practiced with our mind by using these parables. We've already been comfortable reading these allegories and these similes and metaphors that have no obvious answers. And then we can take those teachings that we have and we can apply it to those other issues out in the world where nuance is so important. So that's a long-winded answer on why I feel like parables are so important and why I feel like it's so important to give everybody space to have their perspective and us listen to it with the heart of humility. As I was, when Travis asked me about it, I couldn't get these thoughts out of my head, and especially as that snowball coming down the mountain kept coming, I couldn't get these thoughts out of my head. And so thank you for bearing with me as I shared these. And we have 5 minutes. That's okay though, because y'all had me again. And I said, you can't, how are you gonna do mustard seed for an hour? Well, we're gonna do it in 30 minutes. When you have me again in like 3 weeks, okay? So we'll do 2 parables when I teach again. I appreciate everybody's attention. Hopefully everybody will think on those 5 questions and ask a lot of questions. Any last comments? Throwing tomatoes, anything like that? Y'all can. Yes, ma'am.
I'm not sure how to put this in words, but it's been poorly. There's a word at the end of the word in the Psalms a lot, sometimes at the end of a place. It says Selah, S-E-L-A-H. And my favorite interpretation of that is pause and ponder. And I think that's a lot of what the Bible in general it's not about the stories and learning the facts and the people's names and stuff. It's about pausing and pondering God's coming to us and working with us and through us and his existence and his love and all that. It's that we need to pause
Yeah.
and embrace him.
Pausing is hard sometimes. Any other comments? Yes, sir.
What hits me is, and your second point on your very opening slide is the humility that we all need more of. I know I do. And in doing that, it opens us up to hear other people, the perspectives that I've heard that brought kind of a light bulb go on in my head this morning from other people. And that humility is what allows us and puts us in that place, like you talked about the Jewish rabbis that would, argue over things and interpretation, but then they'd go eat together. And that's what God, I think, is really seeking for all of us, because it takes me back to the Psalm 1 where he says, blessed is the man who meditates on the law of the Lord day and night. And that's what this, I think, you have been describing, is that we spend that time there and hold on to the things that we believe lightly so that we can hear other people and relate to them more closely.
And I think when we listen to other people's perspectives, that then holding on to things lightly, we just might change our perspective.
Yeah. Thank you.
Anything else? All right, you got 2 minutes back. Congratulations.